As I stand here in front of you all today, I feel inspired because I'm looking at the future. I know how much potential and talent there is in this room. And I know that if you decide to, each and every one of you can and will make the world a better place. We're here today talking about our vision for a sustainable future. And that raises two questions for me. Can we continue to grow and develop without totally destroying the planet? And if so, what will it take? Now, you may or may not know that the whole concept of sustainability first broke onto the world stage in the late 80s and early 90s. There was the Brundtland Report that was published in 1987, which gave us our first real working definition of sustainable development. It was this: development that meets the needs of the current generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Later that same year, there was a report published on the same topic by the economist Edward Barbier, and it included the now iconic Venn diagram, which shows sustainability as the sweet spot when we manage to balance social, economic, and environmental needs. Now, that has been reimagined, and most of you are probably familiar with the new Venn diagram, which shows people, planet, and profit. You may have encountered it when you've been studying the Sustainable Development Goals. But did you know that the Sustainable Development Goals grew out of the 1992 Rio Earth Summit? It was the UN's Conference on Environment and Sustainability. And it brought people from around the world together to talk about how we can develop sustainably. It gave a framework for cooperation and decision-making that literally thrust the notion of sustainability into the global spotlight. And things have never really been the same since. It's still going on. So as you're probably gathering, I've been at this for a while. I've been in the field of sustainability for over 30 years. And if there's one thing that I've learned, it's this: if we're going to have any hope of a sustainable future, we need people to care, really care about why it matters. And even more important than that, we need leaders who care, who are willing to make tough decisions and lead us to a sustainable future. Now, you might wonder, well, hang on, isn't sustainability more about science? Why is it about leadership and caring? It seems a bit random, but it's not. So let me tell you how I came to that conclusion. I started to study sustainable development in the mid-90s while I was studying geography. And if you were listening to my timeline back then, it was rather well timed because I was practically studying the field in real time as it was emerging. And when I left university, I decided I wanted to be a part of creating a sustainable future. So I went to work in the field of sustainable transport. And the goal of the projects that I was involved in was to help reduce air pollution and climate emissions by reducing unnecessary car use. And the way we used to do that was by encouraging people to choose alternatives like walking and cycling and public transport. But the thing was, we needed to make those alternatives more attractive. So we needed to take lanes away from cars and give them over to buses and to cycle lanes. And now the challenge that I encountered was that that wasn't very popular, because taking car lanes away made more congestion, which was kind of beneficial. It's kind of a story. But at the same time, the people who had to make the decisions to do that were our politicians, and the drivers were voters. And it required leaders who were completely convicted of what they were doing for us to make any progress. And I began to understand that there are two types of leaders: the ones who believe in what they're doing and the ones that don't. I was lucky. I got to see some really impressive leaders like Ken Livingstone, the mayor of London, who really did believe in what he was doing. But I decided I was more interested in figuring out what made great leaders than staying in sustainable transport. So I shifted gears and I moved into leadership. And what I discovered is that truly great leaders have one thing in common: they care. They really care, and they lead from the heart. They know what they care about, and they're willing to stand up for it no matter what. They make those tough choices. And you know what? People see that, and they feel inspired by it, and they're willing to follow them, whether that's voting for them, or buying from them, or working for them. They inspire action. I call that courageous authenticity. They show courage and they show conviction. They're what I would call the shining lights in leadership. So I decided to go find the shining lights in sustainability. And I found them in some pretty interesting places. So did you know that Ben & Jerry's, the ice cream company, is famous for being sustainable? Who would have thought that ice cream is a beacon of sustainability? But they are. So what do? Well, they set really ambitious climate targets, and then they meet them. And then they set new ones, and they meet those. They don't sit on their laurels. They keep going. They use fair trade products, so they get their suppliers to get them things like vanilla and chocolate. And they make sure that the people that are growing it are treated fairly. So they have a fair wage, they have decent living conditions. And they do things like use recyclable, compostable, or reusable packaging. So sustainable ice cream, it's a thing. Cool. Then there's Patagonia, the outdoor clothing company. Did you know that 87% of their products are made from recycled materials? 87. They make fleece jackets out of recycled water bottles. And they are also really, really committed to putting their money where their mouth is. So in addition to having ambitious climate targets and using organic and recycling materials, they started in 1985 donating 1% of their total profit to projects that were going to protect the planet. To date, they've donated $140 million US on that project alone. But then in 2022, their founder, Yvan Chouinard, he went a step further. And he turned their company into a nonprofit. They reinvest close to 100% of all of their profits back into projects that support the planet and the people. That is an example of shining light leadership in the field of sustainability. Now, what does all this have to do with you? Well, whether you know it or not, everyone in this room is a leader. You don't need a fancy job title to be a leader. A leader is someone who impacts and influences the people around them. And what you say and what you do shows people what you care about. And that influences them. You even lead yourself just in the act of setting goals, making decisions, and dealing with setbacks. So you're not getting out of this conversation by saying, well, I'm not a leader, because you are. So the question I have for you is, what kind of leader are you? Now, you're young. You may not know yet, and that's okay. Let's start with what you care about. You probably care about a lot of things. Your hair, your social media platform, what's for dinner. But let's get deeper, and let's think about what are the principles that guide how you act. Even that might be hard to grasp. So think about what upsets you, because oftentimes the things that upset us show us what matter to us. So you maybe care about family and things like honesty and fairness. Maybe you believe in equality or kindness. And if those are things that matter to you, then if people treat you unfairly, if they lie to you, or they don't appreciate your creativity, that may upset you. Those things matter to you. They're your core values. So let's say for a second, fairness is what matters to you, as one example. And in my experience, a lot of teenagers care about being treated fairly, and that's great. So if you care about being treated fairly, hopefully you also believe it's important to treat others fairly. And so if you think about, maybe in 5 or 10 years' time, you could be a business owner. If fairness is important to you, how will that shape how you treat your employees and your suppliers? You'd have to think about, how would you want to be treated if you were in their shoes? What would seem reasonable and fair? There is a lot about this world that is unfair, which we can't do anything about. But the one thing we can do is treat others the way we would want to be treated ourselves. And that is the key to great leadership. Knowing what you care about and being willing to take action. Now, coming back to sustainability for a minute, a lot of people think that sustainability is important. Intellectually, they know climate change is real. Polar ice caps are melting. Deforestation is happening. We've lost 25% of the Amazon rainforest already. That's 800,000 square meters, which is almost 10 times the geographic area of the UAE. Whether you knew that or not, knowing it and caring about it are not the same thing. Most people don't understand the impacts, and they can feel really overwhelmed by the complexity of sustainability. And so what I want to do is I want to help you understand why you should care. If you think that it matters, that's enough. That's a great starting point. Go out and find out why it matters and make yourself care. And so I know that's a little abstract. How do I do that? I'm going to tell you how I did. If we think about the 3 pillars, remember I mentioned people, planet, and profit? My planet piece of caring that's to do with, that's to do with the environment, right? It's about protecting the environment and making sure we conserve it. So why did I start to care about the environment? I grew up on the west coast of Canada, and I spent my winters skiing, I spent my summers hiking in the forests and playing in the tide pools at the beach. And I used to love to watch the hermit crabs and see the starfish. And, I literally was watching ecosystems in action right in front of my eyes. I think I knew what an ecosystem was before I could spell it. And that mattered to me. I really understood the fragility of our environment, and I really loved those moments, those experiences. And I care deeply about allowing my kids to have that same experience and their kids as well. So that's where I began to care about protecting our planet. Now, the people part of sustainability, the people pillar, is about making sure everybody has their basic needs met. So that's making sure that they have access to healthcare, water, education, jobs, things that most of us take for granted. And so for me, going from knowing it was important to actually caring about why I needed to be part of helping happened when I went to Kenya in my 20s. It was there that I saw people living in extreme poverty. Whole families living in houses that were 1 room big, made out of mud and sticks with no electricity and running water. My own experience was that I used to have to walk to a well, 2 kilometers each way, and bring all the water that I was going to use that day in a bucket, a 20-liter bucket. And that was all the water that I was going to cook with, wash myself with, drink, any water that I needed in that bucket, carried by me, over 2 kilometers. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever picked up a 20-liter bucket full of water, but it weighs a ton. It actually technically weighs about 20 kilos, which is 44 pounds. Now, the reality is, most of us use at least 150 liters of water a day. So, living on 20 liters of water is major water conservation, but it really gives you a sense of how valuable water, clean running water, is for all of us. And it made me understand why we all have a responsibility to make sure that people have at least their basic needs met. Now, the 3rd pillar is profit. And that's about how we enable companies in the world to grow economically without destroying the planet. And my understanding of what those trade-offs look like comes again from living on the west coast of Canada, where I witnessed forestry practices. And we do have the most beautiful, amazing forests. I would encourage you to all go and have a little peek sometime. And what used to just absolutely devastate me was when they would clear cut those forests. They would rip them down in a matter of days, and all of a sudden this beautiful forest was gone. And with it, all of the habitat of the plants and the animals and the insects. But more than that, we were affecting downstream ecosystems as well, because we would have runoff that would cause sedimentation, which would block the spawning routes for the salmon. It was horrifying. And so the thing is, it's not necessary. It is possible to manage our forests and all of our activities in a way that's sustainable. And that was when I really began to understand the trade-off between planet and profit, and the importance of making sure we do it in a balanced way. We have to care enough to make those choices, though. So what about you? Do you think you care enough to lead for a sustainable future? If you are not sure, go find out. Please, put down your phones. Go spend some time in the forests, on the beaches. Maybe go cycling, go snorkeling on the reefs. Check out why our planet is the most beautiful thing and why it needs to be saved and protected at all costs. And then look at the people. Did you know that over half the population lives on less than $6 a day? $6 a day, you guys spend that at Starbucks in 5 minutes. Try living on $6 a day, or go meet the people who live on $6 a day. And then you'll begin to understand why we need to make sure that everybody has at least their basic needs met. And go see what happens when industry is allowed to grow without any control. See the impact on our rivers and our forests and our air. And when you do discover why we need to care, then we need you to take action. There's two kinds of action we need. There's the simple everyday things. Remember how I said that we lead ourselves? Well, we can lead our lives sustainably right now by making simple choices to reduce our waste or recycle our waste, use less water, use less energy, buy from ethical companies like Ben & Jerry's and Patagonia. But we also need big actions, bold, courageous actions from our leaders. And as you head out into the world and begin to make a difference, think about whether you are going to be one of those leaders that takes bold and courageous action. We don't have to walk out of this room and save the planet all at once. Like I said, lots of small changes have a big impact. And you don't have to give up your dream, whatever that might be. Remember I said I found shining stars in all the strangest places? You can do just about anything and do it sustainably. You just need to care. So let me ask you again, what kind of leader are you? Are you one that cares enough to lead us to a sustainable future? Because you know what? The future's watching. So lead like it matters.